So glad you could join us on this Shabbat or whatever day you are watching this message. We're glad that you're hanging with us as we continue our series, Blood Brothers, the story of the sons of Jacob. Last week, Jacob brought his two grandsons onto his knees. He kissed them and he said, "They're mine," as he adopted them as his own sons. Today, the hands come down for a blessing. This message is part 26 of our series, and it is called The Fullness. And we start in Genesis 48 and verse 13. Then Joseph took the two of them, Ephraim with his right hand across from Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand across from Israel's right, and he brought them close to him. Now, Joseph's doing everything that he's supposed to do. He positions the boys so his father's right hand, the hand of covenant and authority, falls naturally on his oldest, Manasseh. Oldest to the right, youngest to the left, the expected order, the natural order. And he's done what he's supposed to do, and he waits. Verse 14, it says, "But Israel stretched out his right hand and placed it on Ephraim's head, though he was the younger, and his left hand and placed it on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands, though Manasseh was the firstborn." So the narrator of Genesis uses the words right and left 7 times in these versions. He's not going to let you miss what the hands are doing. Jacob has crossed his hands. Now, in the ancient Near East, the right hand was the hand of covenantal authority. When kings acted, when oaths were sworn, when God moves in the Psalms, it's almost always the right hand. To place the right hand on someone's head was a binding legal declaration of inheritance, and with it, the responsibility to carry the blessing forward for everyone who comes after. Now, Jacob adopts Ephraim and Manasseh. It's out of love for Rachel and Joseph. He gives Joseph 2.5 tribes where there would have been 1, and together they carry the inheritance of Joseph. And within that double portion, he crosses his hands and places the greater responsibility on Ephraim, the younger. Ephraim's name will actually, in the prophets, become an alternate name for the entire northern kingdom of Israel. It's the unexpected one, bearing the weight of covenantal responsibility. That has been the signature move of God throughout Genesis. So Jacob crosses his hands on purpose. And in verse 15 it says, "Then he blessed Joseph and said," it's funny, he's not blessing Joseph, he's blessing his grandsons, Joseph's children. But Nahum Sarna says that a father is a vicarious recipient of blessings bestowed on children. What lands on Ephraim and Manasseh lands on Joseph through his descendants. So it's a blessing for Joseph. Now what Jacob says next has 3 layers to it, and we're going to go through them together in verse 15. He says, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked." The first layer is the patriarchal line. He anchors the blessing and covenant record. This God has a track record across generations before Jacob even arrived. Second is the next part of the verse. He says, "The God who has shepherded me throughout my life to this day." This second layer is personal testimony. This is a family of shepherds. That's their identity. That's what they told Pharaoh. It's why they were given Goshen in the first place. And Jacob, dying in the most sophisticated civilization in the ancient world, says, "The God who has been my shepherd." He's speaking from inside his own life. He knows what a shepherd does. He watches for predators in the dark. He finds water in dry ground. He carries the one who cannot walk. And he's saying, that is what God has been to me all my life to this day. And he's saying to his grandsons, and that's what God will be to you. The shepherd God is yours now. And the third layer is in the beginning of verse 16. He says, "The angel who redeemed me from all evil," or all ra, as we've talked about throughout this series. The third layer is personal relationship with God. 17 years ago, Jacob told Pharaoh his days had been few and ra. Now on his deathbed, the same word, and he says, "The angel redeemed me from ra." He's not denying the pain. He's saying he recognizes that God has been there the whole time through all of the ra. The word for redeemed is Gaal. It's the kinsman redeemer root, the same word used in the book of Ruth for Boaz, the Goel. God himself has been Jacob's Goel, the one who stayed, the one who never left, even in the midst of Ra. An angel here is not a distant heavenly being. It's another name for God himself: guardian, redeemer, personal Lord, all in one. So there's three layers to what Jacob is saying. That we're talking about the God of history, the God of my life, and the God who met me personally. And then comes the request in the rest of 16. May he bless the boys. May they be called by my name and by the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac. May they multiply to a multitude in the midst of the land. And this is the whole chain of covenant faithfulness: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Israel. And it is called down over these two boys in a room in Egypt. Genesis 48, verse 17, it says, when Joseph saw that his father placed his right hand upon Ephraim's head, it was wrong in his eyes. So he took hold of his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, not like that, my father, because this one's the firstborn. It's like, I feel like I say this to my dad all the time. Not like that, Dad. Put your right hand on his head. This is the right order. But the blessing's already been spoken, and the words have already been prayed over Ephraim. And Joseph is trying to reach in and correct his father's hands. He's not being disrespectful. He genuinely believes that his father has made a mistake because of his eyesight. But he can't see what his father can see. He's trying to close the door that's already open. He's applying ordinary logic, like firstborn, right hand, to a moment that has never once operated by ordinary logic in this entire story. Joseph, of all people, should know better. He was the younger who received the coat of many colors. He spent his entire life being the one God worked through sideways. And now he's trying to put the right hand back on the firstborn. But he cannot see what his father can see. Verse 19. But his father refused and said, I know, my son. I know. Manasseh will also become a people. And he will also become great. I love the moment. I love the way Jacob's saying it. I love how it sounds. I know, my son. I know. Dad, don't do that. I know, my son. I know. It's one of the quietest and most powerful lines in all of Genesis. It's not confusion. It's not an apology. Jacob knows exactly what he's doing, and he's not going to switch his hands. He honors Manasseh. He too will become a people. He'll become great. He's still one of the tribes of Israel. The left hand is still a blessing, but Ephraim will be greater, but not greater in the way we think greater in our Western world. Not in status, not in privilege. It's in the scope of what he will carry. 10 tribes will bear his name. The kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom, will be called Ephraim. And that seed will become Melo HaGoyim, the fullness of the nations. It's in the rest of the verse. It says, but his younger brother, Ephraim, will become greater than he is, and his seed will be the fullness of the nations. Melo means fullness, or that which fills. HaGoyim is the nations, not just a blessing, a prophecy. And it unfolds as Jacob spoke it. In the rest of the Hebrew Bible, the line of Joseph through Ephraim represents God's promise to bless the nations because they're scattered into the nations. The line of Judah carries the royal rule. Both are combined in David and Solomon. There's one kingdom, both lines under one king. But then after Solomon's death, the kingdom divides. Jeroboam, who's from the tribe of Ephraim, leads the 10 northern tribes to secede from Judah. Ephraim goes north, Judah stays south, and the prophets use Ephraim as the name for the entire northern kingdom of Israel. And then Assyria comes in 722 BCE. The northern kingdom, Ephraim, Israel, is conquered. 10 tribes are deported, and they're scattered into the nations, and they never come back. Judah, the southern kingdom, will also go into exile in Babylon in 586 BCE. But Judah will return. 70 years later under Cyrus, Judah comes home. The royal line survives, but the northern tribes do not return. Their seed fills the nations. What Jacob spoke as blessing, exile made literal. The seed of Ephraim is scattered. in the nations because they're still there. And at the end of the Tanakh, both houses are still apart. Judah is home. Ephraim is not. But that's not where the story ends, because Jeremiah heard something from the Lord in the years before Judah goes to Babylon. It's in Jeremiah 31, verse 31. Behold, days are coming. It's a declaration of the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. The new covenant in Jeremiah is explicitly, specifically, and by name addressed to the house of Joseph, Ephraim, Israel, and the house of Judah. Both houses. The northern kingdom has already been gone for a century by this point. And Ephraim is scattered in the nations. And God says, I'm going to make a new covenant with Israel and with Judah, both together. This is not a covenant with a new people replacing the old. It's a covenant with the same people reunited. You cannot have the new covenant without both houses present to receive it. Joseph and Judah together. Now, Ezekiel wrote during the Babylonian captivity, where Judah, the southern nation, is still in exile. And Jeremiah had already spoken of a new covenant with both houses. And now in Babylon, God gives Ezekiel a strange instruction. It's in Ezekiel 37, verse 15. The word of the Lord came to me, saying, You, son of man, take one stick and write on it for Judah, for the sons of Israel joined with him. Then take another stick and write on it for Joseph, and the stick of Ephraim, and the house of Israel. All Israel joined with him. Verse 17, then join one to another for yourself as one stick, so that they may become one in your hand. So the two sticks become one. Oh, the two become one. You mean just like man and woman in the Garden of Eden? Yeah. Unlike what Jeremiah prophesied before the Babylonian captivity, because God promised he would restore all of Israel, Ephraim and Judah, together. Then look at Ezekiel 37, verse 21. Then say to them, Thus says the Lord your God, Behold, I will take the sons of Israel from among the nations where they have gone. I will gather them from every side, and I will bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel. And one king will be king to all of them, and they will no longer be two nations, and never again be divided into two kingdoms. So Ephraim, the northern kingdom, scattered into the nations. Judah sent to Babylon, but goes back to Jerusalem. But God is going to gather all of them, both of them, from every side, one nation and one under one king. And then verse 26, Ezekiel says, the Lord says, I will cut a covenant of shalom with them, and it will be an everlasting covenant with them. And I will give to them and multiply them. And I will set upon my sanctuary among them forever. So Jeremiah called it the new covenant. Ezekiel calls it the covenant of peace. They are looking at the same promise from two different angles. But look at what is said in verse 28. Then the nations will know that I am the Lord, who sanctifies Israel, when my sanctuary is in the midst forever. Look, the nations don't come first. The nations come because Israel is restored. They can trust the God of Israel because he did what it said. So Judah comes back, right? Zerubbabel rebuilds the temple. Ezra restores the Torah. Nehemiah rebuilds its walls. When Israel is restored, the nations will see it and know if the God of Israel makes a promise, then he is good to keep it. This is the order. This is the way. It has always been the order. In the first century, during Passover, Yeshua claims both the covenant of shalom from Ezekiel and the new covenant from Jeremiah in a single cup of wine. Luke 22, verse 20. In the same way, he took the cup after the meal, saying, This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. The cup after the meal is the cup of redemption. It's the third cup of the Passover Seder. It's a memorial to God redeeming Israel from Egypt with an outstretched arm. And now Yeshua takes that cup and says, this is the new covenant, the one Jeremiah promised to Joseph and Judah, the covenant of shalom that Ezekiel saw. The two become one in my blood. The king, the son of David, sealing in one cup of wine what the prophet saw from a distance. Look, the fullness of Israel is for the fullness of the Gentiles. Israel, which is Joseph and Judah, are restored under one king. And through that restoration, the nations recognize the God of Israel and come home to their Creator. Yeshua establishes the new covenant that Jeremiah promised and unites all of Israel under his Davidic rule. Jacob said, Melo HaGoyim over Ephraim's head. And we are living in a moment when that fullness is still being called back. The Lemba are a group in Zimbabwe and South Africa that have maintained for centuries an oral tradition that they descend from ancient Israelites. They practice circumcision. They observe kashrut. In the 1990s, there was genetic research that confirmed that they carry Jewish priestly lineage in their DNA at rates comparable to known Jewish populations. The seed of Israel found in southern Africa all these years later. And through the work that I've done with Jewish Voice Ministries, I've helped to facilitate clinics for the Lemba. They use the word Lemba like we use the word Jewish. And their neighbors, Gentile neighbors, as these local Messianic Lemba congregations and communities are established of Yeshua following Lemba. And something happens every time we go. We go specifically to serve the Lemba, but we also serve their Gentile neighbors. And when they receive help because of the Lemba, the nations, they see it. The nations are being blessed through the seed of Israel in Zimbabwe. And the Lemba are not alone. There are communities like this all over the world, groups that carry the memory of Israel in their bones, being called back by God to come home. And I want to show you a song that the Lemba taught me. It's in their own, it's their own Messianic Jewish Lemba hymn in Shona about how Yeshua is this mountain of health and that one day we will all go to Jerusalem to worship him together. And I got to sing it with Alpheus, who's the overseer of this community. And honestly, it's one of the great moments of my life. So check out this song.
Oh, Yeshua Chikomo. Chikomo, Jerara. 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 Oh, Yeshua Chikomo. Oh, Yeshua Chikomo. Oh, Yeshua Chikomo. Oh, Yeshua Chikomo. Andemo, 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 Jerusalem, andemo. Oh, Yeshua Chikomo. Chikomo, Jerara. Yeshua Chikomo. Chikomo, Jerara. Oh, Yeshua Chikomo. Chikomo, Jerara. Oh, Yeshua Chikomo. Chikomo, Jerara.
Jacob said it. Jeremiah prophesied it. Ezekiel saw it. And we get to live in the reality that our ancestors could only dream of. Paul writes of these same things in Romans 11, verse 25. He says, "For I do not want you, brothers and sisters, to be ignorant of this mystery, lest you be wise in your own eyes, that a partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of Gentiles has come in. When Paul writes the fullness of Gentiles, he's using the Greek word pleroma. The Septuagint uses a different Greek word to translate this verse in Genesis 48. But the original Hebrew uses melo, which is fullness, that which fills. Of course, Paul could read both texts, I imagine, in both Greek and Hebrew, but the Greek word that he chooses is more precise than the Septuagint's and closer to the Hebrew. It means the appointed completion. The moment when the seed that filled the nations has reached its appointed measure, God calls the scattered seed of Ephraim home, and through that restoration, the nations are then drawn back to their Creator. Here's what Paul is not saying that other people say he's saying. The Gentiles are not secretly Israelites. The church has not become Israel. No, the way it works, the way it's always worked, is Gentiles come to God as Gentiles, drawn to the God of Israel through what God has done for the Jewish people. So Paul continues, verse 26. In this way, all Israel will be saved. And it's written, the deliverer shall come out of Zion, and he shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. The deliverer from Zion, the one king that Ezekiel saw, the new covenant that Jeremiah promised, forgiveness of sins for both Joseph and Judah, Ephraim and Judah. Exactly what Yeshua held in the cup of redemption at Passover. Paul says all Israel will be saved, but he's not meaning that every individual Jewish person automatically, but that Israel as a people will not be lost. There will be a remnant, a small group of people that do what they're supposed to do and believe what they're supposed to believe. We call them now Messianic Jews who know Yeshua the Messianic Jews who know Yeshua represent that remnant. And all Israel is present in the ones who call on his name. This is, my friend Troy spoke about this a few weeks ago here at Restoration. And the same is true for every nation. Not every person will be saved, but from every nation there will be those who call on Yeshua. And those who call on Yeshua are a remnant from every people, and every nation is represented in the ones who choose to come home. Romans 11, verse 28. Concerning the good news, they are hostile for your sake, but concerning chosenness, they are loved on account of the fathers, for the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. Israel's chosenness has not been canceled. They were never chosen. We were never chosen for our own sake alone. We were chosen so that the nations could find their way to the God of Israel. The gifts and callings cannot be taken back. It cannot be undone. Once given, they stay given. And then Paul says, verse 32, for God has shut up all in disobedience so that he might show mercy to all. God has enclosed everyone in the same condition, Jew and Gentile, so that no one can claim a superior position. No one arrives by their own merit. No one has a back door. The enclosing is the point, because the only way out for everyone is the same way out. Mercy for all. The same mercy through the same door. And Yeshua, our Messiah, is the door. That is the sequence that has always been the sequence. And in Yeshua, everyone comes home to their Creator. So there's three things we can take with us from this message. The first is, God knows exactly what he's doing. Whatever is happening in your life that looks like a mistake, the wrong door opening, the wrong person getting the job, the plan falling apart in a way that you didn't expect, it may not be a mistake. Look, some of us are in a season of our lives that makes no sense. And it's human when things make no sense to reach in and try to uncross the hands. You know, to put back the way you think it would be best. No, Dad, you're doing it wrong. I know. Jacob said it to Joseph. The Lord is saying it to you. I know, my son. I know. But you also have to remember that he's not confused. He sees what you cannot see. And he knows exactly what he is doing. The second thing you can take is God has always been making two into one. From the garden to the crossed hands to the divided kingdom to the prophets, God has been making two into one. And now we're living in a generation when it is more visible than it's ever been. God is doing something in our generation There are Jewish people coming home from the nations back to God. The nations are being drawn to the God of Israel. And in congregations like Restoration in Seattle, all over the world, we have Jews who live as Jews and Gentiles who live as Gentiles who are following Yeshua together. Look, we know the church does not replace Israel. Gentiles are grafted into the promises of God to the Jewish people, not the other way around. It's one body and one family together. And when you sit next to someone in a room from a different nation, like we do every Shabbat in Seattle, somebody from a different nation, a different background, and a different story, and you both call Yeshua Lord, that is the miracle. That's what all of this has been moving towards. And 3, in Yeshua, everyone can come home. The Eden blessing was not meant to stop with Jacob. It was meant to move through Joseph, through Ephraim, through the seed that's scattered into the nations, and through Judah, through David, through Yeshua, the king who sits on the throne of David and holds both sticks in his hands. Joseph and Judah. He brings the Jewish people back under his rule and makes it visible to the nations so that they can come to him as well. It's not because of birthright. It's not because of achievement. God has shut up all in disobedience so that he might show mercy to all. Everyone arrives at the same way through the same mercy. And if you are a follower of Yeshua, then you carry the same blessing. So be who God made you to be, Jew or Gentile. Be in community with people from every nation who love and serve Yeshua. That is what Jacob did in the room in Egypt. And we are the generation that gets to live what those who came before us only saw from a distance. Our job is to live out what Jacob started, what Jeremiah heard, what Ezekiel saw, and what Yeshua made possible through the spilling of his blood and the resurrection from the dead. In Yeshua's name, amen. I love you guys, and I hope you'll come back and roll with us through the last 2 chapters of Genesis.